What is the most kind of memorable, powerful UFO encounter report you ever heard? Just to you on a personal level, like this something that was really powerful.
Well, I mentioned the Zimbabwe one. That's particularly interesting. And one that actually most people don't know about, but family driving down the highway, two little girls in the back, open glass topped car, and the little girls see a craft right over their car. This is in the middle of the day on a busy highway. The mother sees it. They look around, nobody else seems to see it. So the girls take out their camera, take a picture of it, and then they get home. They look at the picture. There's no craft, but there's a little object about 30 feet above their car or so, probably about 3 feet across, kind of star-shaped. It's not the craft, but it's something else. There was something there. And so what were they seeing? Were they seeing a projection? And why were only they seeing it?
And the photograph was capturing something very different than they were seeing, but there's still an object. What can you give a little bit of context? Is this from modern day?
It's modern day. Oh, yeah, they had a camera. I mean, they had a cell phone camera.
And this was like a
4 or 5 years ago.
Report provided. By the way, where's like a central place to provide a report? Is this?
Oh, there's MUFON, but this isn't public. I've seen the picture.
Oh, this is something you've directly interacted with.
Yeah. I've seen the picture.
So those moments like that, they captivate your mind.
It's so different. It doesn't fall into the standard story at all. But in another way, it's kind of it's a clear enunciation of this notion that when people see events, they don't all see the same thing. Now, we've heard this about like traffic accidents. Different people will see the color of the car differently or the chain of events differently, and just tells you that memory isn't anywhere near what we think it is. But the issue around these so-called UFO reports is that the same people will see a very different thing, almost as if whatever it is projecting something into the mind rather than it being real, right? Rather than it being a real manifestation, material in front of you, it's actually almost some sort of an altered virtual reality that is imposed on you. I mean, I think the company Meta and all the virtual reality companies would love to have something like that, right? Where you don't have to actually wear something on your face to experience a virtual reality. What happens if you could just project it?
Well, that's the fundamental question from an alien perspective. When you look at, or as we humans look at ants, how does its perception system operate? So not only how does this thing's mind operate, how does the human mind operate, but how does their perception system operate so that we can like stimulate the perception system properly to get them to think certain things. And so, that's a really important question. Humans think that, the only way to communicate is in like 3D or 4D space time. There's physical objects, or maybe you write things in some kind of language, but there could be just so much more richness in how you can communicate. And so from an alien perspective, where somebody has much greater technological capabilities, you have to figure out, how do I use the skills I have to stimulate the limited humans?
Right. Well, I mean, let's take the ants again as an example. Let's say that you wanted to make ants practical. You wanted to use them for something, right? You wanted to use them as a form of biological robot. Now, DARPA and other people have been trying to use insects turn them into biological robots. But if you wanted to, you would have to interact with their sense of smell, right? Their pheromone system that they use to interact with each other. So you would either create those molecules to talk to them, to make them do. I'm not saying talk to them as if they're intelligent, but talk to them to manipulate them in ways that you want. Or if you were advanced enough, you would use some sort of electromagnetic or other means to stimulate their neurons in ways that would accomplish the same goal as the pheromones, but by doing it in a sort of a telefactoring way. So let's say you wanted to telefactor with humans. You would interact with them. And this is a technology which you could imagine possible. You could telefactor information into the sensory system of a human, right? But then each human is a little bit different. So either you know enough about them to tailor it to that individual, or you just basically take advantage of whatever the sensory net is that that individual has. So if you happen to be good at sound, or you happen to be a very visually inclined individual, then maybe the sensory information that you get that's most effective in terms of transmitting information would come through that portal.
I think the aliens would need to figure out that humans value physical consistency. So we've discovered physics. So we want our perception to make sense. Maybe they haven't, that's not an obvious fact of perception, that you have to figure out what kind of things are humans used to observing in this particular environment of Earth, and how do we stimulate the perception system in a way that's not anomalous, or not too, doesn't cross that threshold of just like, well, that's way too weird.
Right.
So they have to, I mean, that's not obvious that should be important. Maybe you want to err on the side of anomaly, like lean into the weirdness. So communication is complicated.
Yeah. Well, that's why I always find this issue of people talking about the so-called grays as interesting, because it is related to what you're saying. They're different enough, but they're not so different as to be scary, right? They're not venom dripping fangs, right? They're different enough, but it's also like they're what you could imagine us becoming in some distant future. So is that a purposeful representation? I don't know. I mean, I don't believe in the grays, for instance, but I believe that people think that they see it. So if we're talking about a communication strategy that says, we're like you, but not the same as you, this might be a manifestation that you represent in terms of a communication strategy.